When someone's like, dude, Baron Fig is really cool, man. Someone came up to me and they were, in a meeting, they had the notebooks and the pens. You're a success. And I'm always like, man, I have at least another 30 years to this up.
Hey Joey, welcome to the show. For those people who don't know who you are, can you give us a little brief introduction as to who you are?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. My name is Joey Cofone. I am a co-founder from Baron Fig. Here in New York City, I'm looking out my window at the skyline. It's a little bit of a gloomy day, but not in here. Oh. All right. Lame jokes aside, we started in 2013, and knock on wood, we're still going.
I think you have the distinction of being the first graphic designer that's been on our show that successfully launched a Kickstarter program. Can you tell us a little bit behind the genesis before you launched the campaign, what your expectations were going into it?
Yeah, sure. Back in 2013, I was just a year out of art school. I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City here. Yeah, loved it. I noticed something interesting while I was there, which is that fellow design students were using two tools, right? It's a laptop and a notebook. So the thing that was curious to me was that the laptops were always the same and the notebooks were always different. They were just like different sizes, different types, everything, different brands especially. I had been probably harping on this problem to my co-founder, Adam Cornfield, for 3 years because I noticed it right away in art school. Finally, we're at a Thai restaurant one night. And so I'm telling him again about these damn notebooks. And Adam was like, dude, let's just make the notebook ourselves. So I quit what I was doing, which was freelancing for startups and making brands and stuff like that. I gave away all of my clients to a couple of friends and started working on what would become Baron Fig.
Wow.
And I realized, I was going through that journey too of trying to find, the quote unquote perfect notebook. I ended up emailing over 500 thinkers around the world, designer, not just a writer, and, illustrators, architects, people who use notebooks, right, for their work, even accountants. My friend is going to love that. And I asked them one question. What do you like in a sketchbook or notebook? Okay, I had over 400 conversations going with thinkers around the world. I used all the knowledge that I had gained, designed the first notebook, which would eventually be called the Confidant Notebook, and we put it on Kickstarter. We were looking for $15,000 to do our first production run. We ended up doing $168,000 in 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it was almost 10,000 notebooks. And we ended up raising more than enough to start the company, which we did the following year.
So you said you've been kind of looking and thinking about and designing the notebook for about 3 years. Is that right?
Yes. It was like a thought in my head for 3 years, and then it was 5 months of intense design.
Okay. But this is starting before you graduated school, right? Because you said, I'm trying to get the dates right here. 2012 you graduated. 2013 the Kickstarter campaign's going, right?
I went to school the first time for literature and philosophy, and I graduated during the 2008 financial crisis. So then
I see.
I went back to school, right, for 4 more years. So yes, 2012 I graduated, and 2013 we launched it. So I was freelancing for a year.
Okay, now that I got that cleared up, it's like it's traveling back in time. It's just not working here.
Yeah,
okay, I get that. So you decide you want to make this notebook and you're going to design it. And you decided at that point in time, you're not going to take on any more client work.
Right.
That's a gutsy move, my friend. So I'm thinking, what are you? You're mid-20s? Early mid-20s?
Yeah, I was 25.
Yeah. And you're saying to yourself, I believe in this idea so much. And you have really no validation at this point, except for these conversations that you're having with people, that anybody's going to buy. And we've seen this happen before where on social media in informal things, love idea, people just want to send you positive energy. And then when you release a product, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. So what was going on in your mind when you said, okay, I'm going to just do this thing, this dream that I have, I want to build this?
Yes. The things people think are risky are not. There are far fewer risky things in our life than we believe. and I'll explain what I mean by that. So when I was in school, design school, my senior year, I was working at a agency, and my goal was to get hired by this agency, and just boom, seamless from college to work, and just keep on rolling. Well, I did well, knock on wood or whatever. I did well at the agency. I got the offer, and in the moment, I realized that was just too easy. So I turned down the offer. Okay, and I'll tell you why this matters. So I turned down the offer. And everybody, including the dean of the design department at SVA, my family, they were all like, dude, you're crazy. What are you doing? And I said, I think I'm going to go do this for myself. Clearly, I can get a job if I need to. So maybe let me see what happens. So they were like, you should not do this. This is a really difficult idea. You're going to have to do everything yourself. So whatever. I did. Long story short, I freelanced. My first project was $200 for 6 weeks. My last project was for $4,000 a week in less than a year, right? So clearly it worked. And that it was kind of at that point where I was like, damn, this is too easy. So then I tell my friends and my family, I am going to stop freelancing and make notebooks. And again, they were like, dude, this is crazy. What are you thinking? You have a good thing. And that's when I realized that people can't see what they don't know, and that you shouldn't take advice. And it wasn't really risky the first time, and it wasn't really risky the second time. If worst case scenario, if I couldn't pay my rent or if I couldn't feed myself, that's what friends and family are there for. And that fear shouldn't stop me from going out, and it didn't.
All right, I have a lot of questions for you. And it's very interesting to me that the first degree that you got was in literature and philosophy, because as I'm reading the mission and the way you write and how you communicate that, it's like somebody's been thinking about things, and hence the whole thinkers, the notebook for thinkers. So here's where I'm kind of trying to figure out with you. So you go to school and to do or study the thing that you think that's what you're going to do with your life. You get out and it's like the meltdown. The world is collapsing on top of itself, right? 2008. It's all falling apart. The job market is nothing. There's no capital in the market. There's nothing. So I'm thinking, and I'm following along your story, that would make a normal person kind of scared. Like, okay, I tried, I failed. Or was it because it was such a gigantic catastrophe that you were thinking to yourself, well, this is much bigger than me. This is no reflection on me and my own self-worth. How does one go from that entering into like the worst economic period in this generation, right?
Yeah.
To feeling like I'm on top of the world. I could do anything I want to.
Chris, we're gonna get personal here. Okay.
Let's do it, man. Let's go deep, dude.
I'm gonna talk some real.
Let's go
stuff.
in the deep end of the pool, my friend.
No,
take me there.
I'm 6'3", man. My feet touch the bottom at the deep end.
Are you really 6'3"? It's hard to tell on camera.
I am 6'3", yeah. It's not just confidence in having a safety net, right? That's part of it. Then right. I think the more powerful part is what I don't know how to say this. I don't think I've ever actually said this in public. So hope your audience.
This is an exclusive, guys.
I think it is an exclusive. I've seen what bad is. When I was young, I was raised by a single woman, my mother, and she got cancer when I was sixth grade, and she passed away when I was in 8th grade when I was 13 years old, right? I got adopted once, and then I got adopted again, basically. Thankfully, I got adopted into my family the second time, but I was adopted by my grandfather and my step-grandmother. And so my grandpa and I were super tight. Cool dude. His name was Lou. He was a plumber. I used to do plumbing with him. He used to say, "It goes downhill, payday every Friday." That was... That was his motto.
Wait, hold on. That needs to be in a T-shirt somewhere. Where
right?
Life sucks, but we get paid on Friday.
Yep, that's it.
Life is good again. Okay, It's all like it's two things wrapped into one. Like you get punched and then you get a slap on the back. Okay.
And he loved what he did too. He was a master plumber, which is actually a real classification. His name was Lou or Luigi. He was an Italian plumber, and he wore all green.
No,
Luigi
in Italian.
Yes,
plumber.
yes,
come on, no.
Yes. It is true.
Okay.
So him and I were close, and he taught me a lot. And he passed away when I was 17. And the moment I turned 18, my step-grandmother came into my room one day, and she said, this isn't working out, exact words I'll never forget. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, you and me here in this house, it's not working out. And I said, okay. And she said, you have to leave. And it was just like that she booted me out. I got my stuff that day, and I hopped in the car, and I drove to the gym, and I worked out. And then after that, I realized I had nowhere else to go. So then I proceeded to sleep in my car for a while because I was embarrassed. Finally, my cousin Matt, he's a fireman. I don't know. For whatever reason, he figured it out. I have no idea. And they took me in, my cousin. And so that whole experience taught me a lot. But between the car and my cousins, I was also on a lot of couches. And I remember the first couch that I slept on, where it wasn't the car, where I was like, man, this is the most amazing thing ever that I got to sleep on a couch. And I remember the first night that I finally got to sleep in a bed after so long. And it was then that I realized what really mattered. If I didn't know already, just having a bed and having a safe place to stay and a soft bed to lie on was really all I needed. So to answer your original question, which is, how do you take these risks? For me, I've been there where I've not had a lot. And so I'm okay if I need to go, sleep on my friend's couch for a little while or crash at, family.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that bad. It's actually quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is the only thing stopping me, the fear of having, can't pay my rent, I think it's not a fear that I should give into.
Thank you for sharing that story. It was through my ignorance bumping into that you were able to share that. And there's some things into your story that I think I don't know how I would process that. And then there are parts of your story where I can 100% relate to. I remember reading this article in Time magazine about the surprising result of people who have very little in life, and that is resiliency. That there's like two paths, right? So people who've not had a stable family, many of them break, and then they need lots and lots of help and therapy. And then some of them just galvanize and become really strong. And from what you just told me, it sounds like you've become the second of the two options there, the latter. And to know that about you, it's like, who do you consider your parent right now?
My wife's parents have become, mom and dad to me, but I didn't have that for, over a decade or 15 years, I guess, or more. I got married in June. What's that, 3 months ago? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's exciting. They're coming to visit next week, which I'm very excited about. And if they're listening to this, hi, Mom, hi, Dad. Which they most definitely are, because they're big fans. It's cool to actually feel, like they do what parents would have done, which just blows me away.
Wow. Okay. Now we have some kind of context to understand why you can take these risks, that you say it's not so risky when you've had very little or nothing, that you kind of understand you knew how to survive then, so you can always go back to that if necessary. And I think that's one of these messages where something I'm struggling with myself, because as a first generation refugee to America, I grew up with not a lot either. And I thought that the environment in which I grew up made me who I am today. And now my kids, who are growing up with more things than I've ever had in upper class neighborhoods and going to private schools, that maybe I've robbed them of that experience, that they don't get a chance to be tough and it's too hot. They're like, oh, turn on the air conditioning. And it gets a little bit out of that comfort zone. It's like, oh, it's so cold. Turn on the heater. Yeah. Like little things like that. I'm like,
yeah, I think
you become
about that
soft,
too.
Yeah.
We, I don't know when a kid is going to be coming, but it's certainly in the next few years for me. Mm-hmm. And I think about that too. You know, where I want them to have like the easiest time almost, but then is that a disservice to them?
Mm-hmm. And, well, I've got a couple of years on you. I'll let you know how the experiment turns out so that you can course correct if necessary. Yeah, call me up. Call me like the day that you know you have a child on the way. Call me up and we'll talk. And I'll say, oh yeah, a little harder would have been better. Or you know what, it's okay because you're actually teaching them through your lens. So it's never like taking anything for granted. I've never been in that position where I put something out in the way that you did, to tell your story, to raise money, thinking that you're going to get $10,000 or $16,000, whatever it is that you tried to raise, and then you wind up getting something in like 10, 16x or whatever it was. It's just a ridiculous amount of money. And I think in your heart, every entrepreneur believes is like, I have a winner idea. It must be. This is destined to become. But then when you actually see it, how'd that make you feel?
Thrilled. You know, my partner and I, Adam, tend to pat ourselves on the back quickly and then move on. So we never really sat down and were like, wow, this is so great. This is amazing. We rock. You know, it was sort of like, dude, that wasn't too bad. And he was like, yeah, man, a little more than I thought. And I was like, word. And then we were like, all right, let's get to work. And that's really what it's been, all these years. You know, I'm going personally on 6 years with Baron Fig, if you include from when I started. We just keep our heads down and keep going. I always say to, you know, when someone's like, dude, you know, Baron Fig is really cool, man. Someone came up to me and they were, you know, in a meeting, they had the notebooks and the pens. They're like, dude, you're a success. And I'm always like, man, I have at least another 30 years to this up. So, you know, talk to me later.
I mean, every once in a while we produce a video and that video takes off and I'm there with you, man. I'm like watching it like, oh my God, like what is going on? Like we struck a nerve somewhere, like a belief was true. And when it's actually realized, some people would find that scary. Like you want to succeed, but you don't want to succeed like too much.
Yeah. It is scary, but it's as much, you know, scary as much as anything else, exciting, thrilling. And I think the more important thing is just to kind of let it all wash over you, at least for me, and just feel it, you know, and like observe it as if all of those feelings, like this is me and those things are over there. And it's a little bit wild and it might overwhelm me for a bit, but then, you know, I'll let that go and I'll be cool. And I feel like throughout my life, that's kind of what I've had to do, is separate, you know, how I feel from what needs to get done.
Now, I want to point something out, and I totally agree with you. And I am the same way. When you were talking to friends and designers and creative types, and we're all on that same search, I think, for the perfect notebook, the holy grail. And we're just sitting there, and you're right. I have a lot of different notebooks. Like that one's too heavy, too many pages, too few, too big, too small, too hard, whatever. The paper feels cheap. And then you're going in to solve that kind of problem. But at the end of the day, regardless of how innovative you are in the space, it's still a commodity item.
Right.
There's a function and people buy it. So I'm just curious from your point of view, what's your opinion on this? Do people buy your notebooks because it's that kind of product, or are they buying part of your story and your philosophy?
Yeah, great question. And I think that was the core problem, actually, was that people were buying the commodity of a notebook, right? And it's, I think, the same thing that Starbucks did to Dunkin' Donuts, right? Mm-hmm. Which was, Dunkin' Donuts was a commodity. Like, we make coffee, here, have it, and there's donuts too. And then Starbucks was like, hey, man, you know, hey, everyone, coffee is a way of life. It's a ritual. You know, it's in the morning or in the early afternoon for most people. And that is how I feel about notebooks. And so the brand is based around the ritual or the sacred space that is a notebook. And so I think that, and I hope that the majority of our customers, see what we're trying to do, if not doing it, and are responding because of that.
100%. I love that story and how you're making that parallel where the notebook becomes part of an experience. You talk about rituals, and rituals are very important to people, and especially for brands that have a strong following.
Yeah, I mean, my wife wakes up every morning. We both get up at 5:30. She sits on the couch here and doesn't even turn on a light, just uses the little light that comes in, and she writes in her journal every morning. You know, and everybody has their own ritual with a notebook, if it's work notes or brainstorming, what have you. And it's just, in the end, it's highly personal.
Okay, so we're as I'm following along your story, you raise the money, crowdfunding. It's a smash, runaway. Take me through what the first year was like for you, because that's where a lot of people fail.
Yeah. What do they say? 80% of startups fail in the first year, 2 years or something. And I was like well aware of that. So like my goal was like, we need to survive. So the first year was wild. It was Adam and myself, and we actually got a studio that was big enough to house all the notebooks. Okay. And we were like, yeah, we're going to ship these things ourselves. And everybody was telling us, dudes, don't do that. You know, it's a lot of work. We were like, we could do it. So we signed a 2-year lease, I think, on this place, right? Then it just so happened someone came along who had done a Kickstarter, who had shipped stuff herself. And she was just sitting there in the room and she goes, don't do it. And we were like, oh, crap, you're right. So long story short, we ended up using a fulfillment center. And Adam and I sat at two tiny desks in this giant room with nothing else in it for like 2 years. And we, in that giant room with those tiny desks, we did everything ourselves. We split everything down the middle: social media, marketing, writing, production, design, customer service. It was all done by the two of us. So it's, you know.
Okay, there's a note for our editor here. You may have to a couple things out.